Hey, welcome back. I've got Chris here, and all of you guys know Chris, and he's kind of our best friend. You get the job. I always say that I would never do in this brokerage, and I've tried to do it for a week. And when I sit down and fill in for Chris, I do one small segment of his job, and then there's this whole other piece that nobody else ever does when he's away. So welcome.
And Steve's had that.
And Steve's had that, and David's
Anderson,
done that, and Ian has done that.
And Ian's done that, and they all say the same thing.
Yeah, nobody. There's job security for you. So doing it. So when I asked you to come on today, I was thinking about trying to tie up all the the loose ends at the end of a year. And all of the challenges that conveyancing has in trying to make things run smooth. Mm-hmm. So if I ask you the question, what's our biggest challenge, or is there a number one thing that stands out?
I think the biggest challenge is probably with all the uploading now, getting it into the right files. You know, we're finding a lot of people are understanding the file names, so maybe we've got to do a better job there, making sure they're very clear as to what paperwork goes into which file. And unfortunately, a lot of people also will upload 2 or 3 documents in the same file, so it takes a lot of work for us. We have to go in and sort that out. Yeah, so that's probably the biggest thing that's slowing our department down.
So going paperless wasn't as easy as going paperless.
No, we thought we'd save some payroll, but we haven't.
We haven't. And as a matter of fact,
we've added.
We're adding. Yeah. So we're reacting to that to make it work properly and more smooth if we can. So great. So when we look at that paperwork, where can we talk to the agents about what they can do to help?
Okay. Well, there's a few things that I don't think the agents are necessarily aware of. Right now, there's a lot of bargains in the market. There's a lot of revenue properties out there under $200,000. I mean, you can get a condo in Bankview for under $200,000.
Right.
So a lot of realtors are taking advantage of this aspect, and they're buying revenue properties.
For themselves.
For themselves, yes.
Right.
Unfortunately, they're not disclosing it. And it's a must. You have to disclose.
Right. And
you have to disclose as early as possible in the transaction.
So the best place to disclose is on the contract.
You have to write the contract. You have to.
Yeah.
But after you disclose it before that, verbally, that you're a realtor and,
right.
and that you're buying this for yourself. But definitely, it has to be on the contract.
Yeah, you need it in writing on the contract. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. I've seen it done, but just write in the terms.
The terms are the usual one, yeah. And if you don't do it in the beginning, you have to do an amendment. And you pray that they sign the amendment, because if they don't, you could lose the deal. So.
Well, and the deal could go ahead and couldn't, but there could definitely be a complaint on it if they didn't disclose in advance that it was a personal trade, that they have a...
you work at REAX, and I know it's one of the big things that REAX is very concerned about.
Personal trades always is, yes.
The other one, transactional brokerage, when you're representing the buyer and the seller, there's not as many deals right now that we're in that situation, because being a designated agency brokerage, we can now have 2 realtors from our brokerage
deal
and not be in transactional brokerage, so they can deal with it. But when they do, the key is that before you write the offer, you have to tell your buyer. If you're in transactional brokerage,
if it's your listing, you have to go to the seller first and see if he's willing
to go into transaction brokerage.
The seller is the one that really needs to be asked first. And if they don't, you can see if the buyer will go to customer status.
Yep.
But your seller needs to. So don't sit down with a buyer, give them a bunch of advice, and write the offer saying, I'm going to put you in transaction brokerage.
It's their choice. That's the key. It's their choice.
And they have to choose to do that, but the seller is the client first, so they have to make the choice first.
When I'm checking the paperwork, I don't know how you go back to your client and say, I should have explained this to you.
Yes.
Because at that point, of course, there's no going back. The genie's out of the bottle and you can't redo the contract. So
No, exactly.
do it at the right time.
Do it at the right
Do it
time.
at the right time.
Perfect. Number 3 looks like dower.
Dower.
I
Everybody
don't
loves
want to
dower.
hit this with a stick again, but
Dower is only in Alberta, but unfortunately we have to deal with it. And the new contracts now have dower, right in them. The new purchase contracts, the listing contracts have always had dower, but they've now added it to the purchase contracts too. So you got to do it twice. You have to do dower, which gives permission from the person not on title, that's married,
To sell the
spouse,
property.
to sell the property.
that's the listing dower.
That's the listing dower. Then you have to do the purchase contract dower, agreeing to sell the property at that price. So it has to be done twice.
Okay.
And of course, on the purchase contract now, there's a spot there where the buyer's agent gets a copy of the dower.
Yes.
So that's new on the contract.
They can request a
They can
copy
request
of
a
the
copy of the
dower.
dower, yeah.
And if you don't provide it, they can collapse the deal.
Yep,
Yes. So, big thing.
big thing. And late deposits. Now, this is one that we've talked about many times.
We
You know,
continue to.
Yeah,
There's problems.
when is it late? There's two clauses in there. One is clause 4.3, which is when the deposit has to be into the brokerage. And then clause 4.6 says that within 3 business days, the brokerage must have it in their trust account. So at which point is it late? I've talked to a couple of lawyers on it. We've talked to Doug from RECA on it.
Yes.
And they all feel that it's a realtor's responsibility that if you have a date in clause 4.3, whether it's December 18th, for instance, that if it comes in on the 19th, you have to allow your seller a choice of whether they want to get out of the
Whether they
contract.
want to back out of the
Yeah.
contract or not because the deposit wasn't late. We can't deposit, as soon as we deposit that into our trust account,
It's accepted by the seller.
it's accepted by the seller and he can't back out anymore. So if you're dealing and you've got a backup offer that's better than the first one, the deposit, excuse me,
The deposit could be a factor in
yeah,
whether that deal goes ahead or not.
exactly.
Yeah, and you could be in trouble if you don't give the seller that option. So make sure you know when that deposit is being delivered to the office. You can't just assume that the buyer's agent's going to get it into the office and you don't have to worry about it. Find out when it came in.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Maybe I'll just continue on here.
Yeah.
I also went to a conference with FinTrack in October,
Yes.
and they had some things that they were concerned about. The old one that we always seem to be having a difficulty with is occupation. They're still getting occupations that aren't clear, and they were very adamant that if the occupation isn't clear, you're not in compliance, and you could get fined
Right.
over a silly thing like an occupation. But
So
they
if
look
I
for
put
compliance.
tradesman or framer or,
Administration,
I need to-
supervisor, those are in every industry.
Yes.
You need to define what the occupation is. The occupation may be an administrator, but in what industry?
right, or with what company and, yeah.
The other concern they had was the risk assessment. I don't think since 2008 when FinTrack was instigated, I've ever seen anything except low risk. And their feelings is that there are a lot of FinTrack forms that should be medium risk or high risk.
Yes.
And some of the things that we're doing,
Just leave it there.
some of the things
Thank
that they expect us to have a medium risk on is things like if somebody doesn't seem to be able to afford the property they're buying. And I see it a lot of times that there'll be a student, a 23-year-old student, and they're buying $1.5 million piece of property with no other persons involved. And you think, how on earth can they afford that? Or if a person's buying 10 properties in 2 or 3 months, they consider that a medium risk. In fact, they consider it a medium risk if somebody is purchasing more than 5 properties in 5 years. So basically, if you're in a relationship, a business relationship, which is more than 3 deals, they're almost considering that a medium risk. Now they're not saying that your client is suspicious or that they're doing anything wrong. All they're saying is they want it checked off as a medium risk, and they want you to put an explanation. So if the person's a
Right.
student, you ask them, where are you getting the funds from? You're a student, and where are these funds coming from? If it's coming from a parent, put that on the FinTrack form.
Put it on the form.
Yeah, they expect the realtors right now to have a little bit more detail on these forms.
This is just basic sales of know your client, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
And completion of the business relationship, the same thing. If you're doing 3 or more deals within a 5-year period, they expect an explanation why.
And this isn't just you. This is the brokerage.
Yes.
If they bought 2 or if they bought 3 or more properties
Through
from
CIR.
the brokerage in the last 5 years, or bought or sold, they become a
Business relationship.
business relationship, and that's important for you guys to mark that down.
Yeah, and I have a reason as to why they're
And-
buying this many properties.
Yeah.
And again, I don't see those forms filled out, and FinTrack at the conference that I was at made the very specific plea that if we don't start filling these forms out, they're going to start fining people. So you
Okay.
don't want to be getting fined.
FinTrack fines are substantial.
They can be.
They
They can be up to 5 years in prison and $2 million. Now, I think you have to have something serious happen to get that, but there's a lot of fines for 500, 1,000,
Okay, so let's watch.
Just
those
make
and
sure
try
that you get a little bit more detail on those FinTrack forms, not just the minimums.
Yeah.
They're looking for more.
Okay, and you've pretty much streamlined that form, so
Fill
out what's there. And
Fill
do it
out the
all.
blanks, yeah, because
Yeah.
we've eliminated the things that aren't necessary. So if it's on the form, we'd like to see it filled out.
And let's make it clear, if you put medium risk on a form or high risk on a form, that doesn't get reported.
It
does
doesn't
it
mean
goes
that
into our file.
Yeah, it doesn't mean we're reporting them. That's what I'm saying. It's just
Yeah.
that type of client is considered a medium risk or a high risk. Like I said, it doesn't mean that you think that they're terrorists or that they're money laundering.
Right.
It's just the fact that the information. And interesting enough, you brought up a situation where in 2016, there actually was a case in Edmonton where these things were paying off, the FinTrack reports. They prosecuted an AMA executive, Alberta Motor Association, embezzling
For
money.
embezzling money.
Yeah,
Right.
$8 million. And that was discovered through bank records and through FinTrack forms.
Through FinTrack.
Yeah,
Isn't that- okay.
he was buying properties in Alberta, he was buying properties in the US, and that obviously he couldn't afford. And so
There you
these
go.
things
Well,
do lead to prosecutions. That's just one example in Alberta.
And I know we've reported files, and we don't know what has happened with ours.
No,
We never hear.
no. FinTrack is
No.
a reporting entity, and that's all they do. They gather information, and then these forms, if they consider them a high risk, they get turned over to the police departments, and at that point, they make a decision whether or not they have the time and whether or not it's conceivable that the thing will they'll get a case out of it.
That we could get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So referral consent form.
Referral consent forms, again, timing. I get a lot of times that nobody fills these forms out, and I ask for them, and they come in, and they're dated, after the fact, which is fine. We don't want anybody post-dating anything or predating anything. We want the correct dates on there. But the form serves 2 purposes. One, it gives you permission
Yes.
to give that person's information to another brokerage or to another realtor. And it has to be written. It's a regulation that you have to have written permission to forward that information. So obviously you have to do it before you call another agent. And the other thing the form does is, again, we have to disclose whether you're getting paid or not, and it discloses that you're getting paid a referral fee.
A referral fee.
And-
Yep.
And so this has to be done when you're first
Prior
talking
to.
to the client and you're discussing, referring them. At that point, you fill out the form, not after the fact.
So I'm hearing a reoccurring thing here that forms need to be done with the right timing over and over again.
Yeah.
We talked about personal trades. That was that. We talked about,
Yeah. Tell me,
excuse me, dower. We talk
Yeah.
about deposits. It's all timing.
Yep.
Huge.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
14.1.
14.1. a lot of realtors, I don't know why, but they don't like filling this one out. It's representation.
Yes.
It gives the realtor the authority to represent that client and to receive contracts and receive amendments and that type of thing. And I asked Jeff Kahane, and he said basically without that being completed, you have no right to receive information from them.
And 14.1 has initials beside it.
Yeah, and the other agent should actually be dealing with your client directly if you haven't gotten the authorization from your client to represent them and to receive information. So it's a very important clause to fill out. And unfortunately, a lot of times it gets missed. So.
Okay.
And the next one, right after that, it's a brand new clause in the contracts, 15.1.
15.1.
And it's basically giving confirmation that everything in this contract is the contract.
Right.
In other words, there are no promises made outside the contract. There are no written amendments to the contract.
No side deals.
No side deals.
Right.
And so it's very important that the buyer and the seller initial that.
Okay, and then uploading documents. We talked
about a little bit about that.
Yep. Put them in the right place.
Put them in the right place, and please try to upload. We still get a lot of emails. We still get a lot of faxes. And as you mentioned, we're trying to go paperless, and it just takes an awful lot more time if they aren't directly uploaded.
Trying to run a couple of different systems. And if you upload them, when you upload them, they show in your transactions immediately as a new file that's come in. Correct? Across the top of the transactions?
Once the trade record has been done, yes.
Okay.
When you first enter all your information, the documents aren't there until we enter them in Conveyance.
Right. The trade shows, but the
documents aren't attached.
Right.
Once we attach in other words, once we look at the documents and approve them, then you can access those documents.
Yeah.
So it takes a couple of days. A lot of times it's within one business day, but allow a couple of days for the staff to do that.
You come in after a weekend, and your busy day is Tuesday, I think, isn't it? After the weekend, with the paper that comes in and the electronic.
Mondays and Tuesdays.
Monday afternoon, Tuesdays, that kind of thing. So okay.
The other thing is the exclusive buyer brokerage agreement, where you have agreed to pay part of your commissions to a buyer.
Yes.
And that is the only form, by the way, that you can complete to do that. You can't do a referral form. You can't refer your own client. So it has to be done on an exclusive buyer brokerage agreement. So make sure that in clause 8.1, it states in there what your commissions are and what's being paid to the buyer. So if you're giving the buyer $1,000, you could put in there, for instance, 3.5 plus 1.5 minus $1,000, and then put in brackets $1,000 being paid to the buyer.
Right.
The reason for that is because a lot of times it isn't clear. A lot of times we'll see a contract and it'll say 3.5, 1.5, and they're offering a $1,000 bonus on the listing. According to the buyer brokerage, that $1,000 should be going to the buyer.
Yes.
We don't do that. We contact the realtor first because in case it's an error.
And get something in writing
where the bonus is going. Yeah. If you have to, you might have to amend the buyer brokerage agreement stating the fact that you're getting the bonus.
And you can't do that carte blanche. You need to do that specific transaction. So when you do the buyer brokerage, it needs to be stated in there. And Rika kind of readdressed that in the last couple of years. Yeah,
and to make sure that we catch it, put it on the trade record sheet in the comment section. That's very, very important. Don't assume that if you've got it in the buyer brokerage that we'll pick up on it. We go through a lot of documents and a lot of fine print. Sometimes it's easy to miss something like that.
Right. Yeah, it is.
Like I said, especially because of the reason we're not sure what your intentions were. If it doesn't match the MLS or it doesn't match what's being offered, a lot of times we assume that you made an error on the buyer brokerage agreement and we don't pay out that money. So we will contact the realtor first.
Right.
By the way, we have a rule in conveyance that we always make a decision based on benefiting our realtors. So if we're not sure asking for a commission, we ask for the highest amount. If we're not sure about paying out, we pay the lowest amount. We always do whatever is going to be the advantage for our realtor.
So make sure you have in writing the changes so it's clear.
Yep. And which brings me on to not just the comments on the buyer brokerage agreement, but the comment sections totally. the girls in the office really love to get comments on the listings request and on the trade record. It's something that they use on a regular basis to, we lost Russ there. Something they use on a regular basis. And the more information that you can put in the comment section, the easier it is for us to process the contract and to get it correct. And that's the key thing, is you want it to be correct the way you meant for it to be done. And so put comments whenever applicable. Use it more than less, the comment section.
Yeah, no, there's these cases that they're just not normal. They don't fit between the guidelines, and it's a great way to straighten that out.
And the last thing is, we get a lot of complaints from realtors, unfortunately, where we have removed the signs, because we automatically look after your signs for you. And so if it's within 1 week of the closing date, we take the sign down.
Yes.
Or if it's on the termination date, or if it's on the expiry date, we take the sign down. Now, we do that for you automatically. We don't call you saying, do you want to take the sign down? Unfortunately, a lot of realtors don't relist until the last moment. And so by the time they relist with a client, we remove the sign, and they get very upset that they have to pay another $42. And rightfully so. You shouldn't have to pay that extra money. Make sure you call us or send an email to the department within 48 business hours stating, I'm going to be relisting this property, please leave sign up.
Yeah.
Even if you're not sure that it's going to be relisted, send us that note, and then you can always, after the fact, if for some reason the client refuses to relist the property, at that point then you can call us and say, please take the sign down.
Yes. Yeah. Good thing.
Yeah.
Chris, thanks for doing your notes on short notice here and coming in. It's a smoother, conveyancing works really hard to do it right the first time. And over I can contest to that, and the amount of effort that's put in. We have staff meetings to cover things like that, and we were at one last week. And we get input from every side to try to make it work. We're not there fighting against you. We're there to help you. So
yeah, and I can guarantee you, like, we have a great group of staff right now. They care.
Yeah.
They're not just putting in 8 hours. They care. They want to make sure that the realtors are looked after. They're getting paid their commissions. They're getting paid the commissions as fast as possible. So
yeah, they are.
So we just need your cooperation in a few of these things that that we mentioned. Everything runs smooth.
It'll come along really smooth.
Yeah.
So at our staff meeting, we played a great video. We decided to throw it into the meeting today, 10 ways to have better conversations. This will help you, it'll help your kids, it'll help whatever. So I'm going to go right into that and wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday, and we will see you again on January the 8th. We'll play this video and then our exit video. Thank you very much, and I apologize for my voice this morning and my coughing.